The Capitol hearing room felt like it was underwater, quiet, slow-moving, but hiding something enormous beneath the surface. Rows of senators in dark suits sat behind polished desks, faces lit by the cold blue glare of national television. Cameras, the live stream ticker rolled across screens across the country. Senate panel begins hearings on national data sovereignty and surveillance reform. Jasmine Crockett walked in without a sound, yet something shifted as she took her seat. She was calm to calm. Her hands rested on a slim leather folder, her eyes focused ahead, unblinking. It wasn't the calm of someone unbothered. It was the calm of someone who had come prepared to drop a match. The hearing began like dozens before it. Senator Mike Lee leaned forward, speaking with the confidence of someone used to owning the room. The Constitution, he began, voice steady, was not written to be edited by algorithms. Data sovereignty means we, not foreign entities, not corporations, control what we know about our citizens. It's about freedom. It's about trust. Applause broke out from a few in the back. He nodded, satisfied, and then launched into numbers and legal codes. Most of the audience began to drift until Jasmine leaned slightly forward, touched the microphone, and said softly, "Senator Lee, I have a few questions for the witness." The man sitting in front of her was the CEO of a major tech platform. He adjusted his glasses and offered a rehearsed smile. "Of course, Congresswoman." Her questions began as expected. Technical, professional, controlled. "Could you clarify how your systems handle metadata collection from users under 18? He answered smoothly. "And do you receive government requests for bulk data access outside court orders?" The smile faltered. He looked to his legal counsel. Then came the shift. Jasmine opened her folder and pulled out a single printed page. "This is an internal directive from your platform's compliance office dated April 17th of last year," she said, holding it up. "It states clearly that the company shall continue sharing behavioral patterns with authorized federal surveillance contractors under Operation Spectre. Can you explain what Operation Spectre is?" The room froze. Senator Lee blinked. The CEO looked visibly shaken. "I'm not familiar with that term," he replied carefully. Jasmine's tone was still calm, but her words sharpened. "Then perhaps Senator Lee can help. He's the author of the federal transparency clause that allows third-party contractors to bypass judicial review in data sharing agreements." Lee shifted in his seat. "Congresswoman Crockett, this hearing is about data protection, not conspiracy theories." She didn't flinch. "What I'm referring to is not a theory. It's a signed memo that outlines an operation that bypasses this very committee." Cameras zoomed in. Phones buzzed in staffers' pockets. Twitter feeds lit up. Jasmine tapped her finger on the page. Spectre isn't just a surveillance project. It's a silent agreement between certain lawmakers and private data firms to harvest predictive behavior models. That's not sovereignty, Senator. That's shadow governance. Lee's face tightened. "This is out of order. I move that her time be reclaimed." Jasmine leaned forward. Reclaimed from what? The truth? Ripple of shocked murmurs moved across the room. The committee chair tried to intervene, but Jasmine kept going. "Senator Lee, I have documentation showing that your office approved at least 2 surveillance extensions without notifying this committee. One of those involved psychological pattern tracking through social media platforms. Tell me, is that part of the freedom you spoke about?" Lee's voice raised, louder than before. "You are accusing a sitting senator of what? Treason?" "I'm holding a sitting senator accountable for decisions made without oversight," she replied, her voice still level. "And you know as well as I do, this is only the surface." She looked straight into the camera. "For the public watching, you deserve to know that national data isn't just being collected. It's being used to model you, influence you, and shape how you see the world. And some of the people in this room are profiting from that control." Producers backstage began shouting. One whispered into a headset, "Should we cut it?" "This isn't in the broadcast script?" Another replied, "Too late. She's gone viral." Senator Lee slammed his palm on the table. "Are you misleading the public?" Jasmine stood. "I'm informing them." For a moment, silence sat on the room like a held breath. Every person, staffer, lawmaker, camera tech seemed unsure what to do next. Lie looked ready to explode. "You've just compromised a national security session." She turned to him slowly, the same calm still on her face. "No, Senator. I just exposed the part of it the public wasn't supposed to see." She closed her folder gently and began to leave. A journalist in the back of the room whispered into their mic, "This might be the moment that shifts the conversation in Washington." As she reached the chamber doors, Jasmine turned slightly and glanced at the cameras one last time. A quiet smile played at the edge of her lips. "We're not done." The feed abruptly cut. Every network screen went black. But within 90 seconds, the raw footage had already been uploaded and shared in encrypted group chats, Reddit threads, and international newsrooms. A storm had begun, and Jasmine Crockett was standing at its eye. The footage of Jasmine Crockett's confrontation in the Capitol hearing room spread like fire across every platform. Faster than the networks could contain it. In less than 2 hours, the hashtag Operation Spectre had trended in over 20 countries. Millions of viewers clipped the moment where she looked straight into the camera and accused. Powerful names of running a surveillance program without congressional oversight. Inside the White House, lights were still on well past midnight. The National Security Council had convened an emergency meeting. Analysts spoke quickly, referencing memos, watching reaction feeds, reading sentiment maps from online networks. One advisor looked up, pale-faced, and said she mentioned Spectre by name. "That term wasn't even on our risk register. Who leaked this?" Back in her DC apartment, Jasmine Crockett sat alone. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing, but she ignored every call. A single laptop glowed in the dark, and on its screen was a document folder encrypted, time-stamped, and set to delete if moved incorrectly. She didn't open it yet. Instead, she stared at a line scribbled in her own handwriting on a sticky note. "Spectre is the virus, not the cure." Then a knock. At her door, she reached quietly for a small recorder beside her. She pressed record before answering. It was Kita Lau, the investigative journalist from Channel 7. Known for her award-winning documentary on election interference in South America. Kita didn't smile. "You shouldn't be alone right now," she said as Jasmine led her in. "I expected your call," Jasmine replied, "not your visit." Geeta looked around the apartment and lowered her voice. "I have documents from Brussels. Spectre is not just a national program. It's linked to 5 other surveillance contracts, Europe, Asia, even parts of Africa." Jasmine didn't look surprised. "And Mike Lee's name." Geeta opened her coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. Inside were printed pages with signatures, wire transfer data, and internal memos from a contractor named Axis Sintel. One document referenced a U.S. senator approving blind data exports through an emergency security clause, buried deep in a trade agreement. "That signature," Kita whispered, "matches a stamp from Lee's former committee office." Jasmine's eyes narrowed. "This isn't just about one senator. This is networked." Geeta nodded. "And they're going to try and bury you." From across the room, Jasmine's phone buzzed again. "Unknown number," she answered. A distorted voice crackled through. "You've made your move. But you're playing chess on a board built by kings." The call cut. Jasmine stared at the phone, then at Geeta. "They know I've got more." In a bunker-like conference room at a government intelligence center, 5 men and 2 women reviewed Jasmine's every move from the past 6 months. "She's been too quiet for too long," one said. "You don't sit still that long unless you're collecting." A woman at the head of the table replied coldly, "We underestimated her. Fix it." Meanwhile, media anchors scrambled to keep up. On national TV, one host said, "This may be the biggest government data leak since Snowden." Another countered, "We don't even know if what she said is true." But behind the scenes, producers were requesting Jasmine's entire political history. A search engine's analytics team confirmed her name had been searched more than any world leader that day. But Jasmine wasn't watching the coverage. She was uploading. The file on her laptop contained 73 pages of notes, transcripts, and communication logs, all tied to Project Fulcrum. The real name behind Spectre. The documents showed that predictive behavior analysis had already been used to shift online narratives before elections in at least 3 US states. They showed profiles built from metadata ACE, income, age, religion being sold to private security firms under the guise of counterterrorism readiness. And at the bottom of the final document was a line: all oversight mechanisms waived with Senate intelligence. Committee's signature override. M. Lee. The city was still dark as Jasmine and Gitta moved through a service tunnel near the metro station. Jasmine had memorized every path under Capitol Hill, not because she was paranoid, but because she had learned a long time ago that knowing the exits was sometimes the only way to survive politics. They emerged on a quiet street in the Eastern Market District. Gitta flagged a black SUV parked under a bridge, the license plate barely visible under the grime. The driver nodded once. No words, just silence. Inside the vehicle, Jasmine finally spoke. "If Spectre reaches into foreign governments, we're not talking about national corruption anymore. We're talking about international law violations. War crimes? If civilians were targeted." Gitta looked over, her eyes colder now. "They were. I didn't show you everything yet." She pulled out her phone and unlocked a separate folder. Dozens of images loaded, grainy satellite photos, blurred stills of server locations, and then finally, the image that made Jasmine's chest tighten, a spreadsheet showing flagged high-risk behavior clusters from a refugee camp on the Turkish border. "These people weren't criminals," Gitta said quietly. "They were children, journalists, political dissidents. Spectre tested its profiling model in war zones before it went domestic." Jasmine's voice dropped. "Did Congress authorize this?" Gitta shook her head. "That's the thing. The money didn't even come through federal channels. It came from black budget funds marked for counter-narcotics operations in Central America. Someone rerouted it." "Who?" Jasmine whispered. Gitta didn't answer. Just then, Jasmine's secure phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen. A coded name, Carter, Redline. She answered. "Where are you?" A male voice said, low and urgent. "Moving, you need to know. Mike Lee is giving an emergency interview tonight live. CNN. He's calling it a constitutional correction. They're preparing to frame you." Jasmine didn't blink. "Then we beat them." To the story, the line went dead. In a downtown media building, the control room buzzed. Monitors showed news anchors rehearsing questions, Mike Lee arriving with a tight entourage, and camera feeds blinking red. "It's going live in 6 minutes, a producer said. Mike Lee sat in the green room, being powdered by makeup staff. One aide leaned close and whispered, "We've neutralized the Brussels documents. The Fulcrum file is being spun as fabricated. Deepfake narrative is gaining traction." Lee nodded slightly. "Get the narrative out before she speaks again. The public doesn't need facts. They need rhythm." On the other side of the city, Jasmine and Gitta arrived at an independent streaming studio owned by a former cybersecurity expert who had defected from a government project 2 years ago. He now ran a digital news channel with over 18 million subscribers, trusted for one reason: he never aired anything he couldn't verify. "You're about to go live in 4 minutes," the tech said, handing Jasmine a microphone. "I've wired the stream through 4 continents and 30 nodes. If someone tries to kill it, it'll replicate." Jasmine stepped into the studio. The lights weren't as bright as the Capitol, but somehow this room felt more honest. The countdown began. 3:02. "Good evening," she began. This is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. And this isn't a campaign. This isn't a performance. This is what happens when elected officials stop asking permission and start telling the truth. Across the country, viewers sat up. It's continued, pulling out documents one by one, speaking clearly but intensely. For months, Project Fulcrum, also known internally as Spectre, has been used to manipulate civilian behavior without consent, without oversight, without borders. Refugees have been profiled. U.S. citizens have been categorized as potential threats based on their online searches. Even members of Congress were monitored. At CNN headquarters, producers screamed into headsets. "She went live. She's stealing our segment." Mike Lee was already on camera, halfway through his opening remarks. "This is not about secrecy," he said, voice calm and rehearsed. "It's about security. And if we have to make difficult decisions in defense of this nation, then so be it." In split screens around the world, viewers saw both feeds. Crockett with documents and raw evidence. Lee with polished phrases and constitutional poetry. On social media, a digital war erupted. The public was split. But something was different. This time, a leak-in-related unexpected hit Twitter through an anonymous drop. It included a payment trail from Axis Intel to a foreign tech firm tied to election algorithms. The account was linked to a family trust under Mike Lee's name. The comment under the post: "Security doesn't come with stock options, Senator." Back in the independent studio, Jasmine took a deep breath. "I didn't come here to bring down a man. I came here to show you that we've built a system where truth has to beg for a microphone." And tonight, it didn't have to. The broadcast ended. Viewership hit record highs. But outside the studio, another black SUV waited. The window rolled down. A woman in a gray suit stepped out and handed Geeta a sealed envelope. "We have a problem," she said. "Spectre was only phase 1. Jasmine looked at her. "What's phase 2? The woman looked around, lowered her voice and said, "Targeted narrative injections. Real time through media, through influencers, through artificial intelligence." Geeta froze. "Narrative warfare." The woman nodded. "It's already started." And somewhere across the ocean, a control room in Eastern Europe lit up with red code. A voice said in Russian, "Activate protocol Miraline. Target Jasmine Crockett." The next move would not be political. It would be personal. The next morning, Washington didn't wake up. It jolted. Jasmine Crockett's late-night broadcast had gone viral across borders. Every major network replayed segments. Subtitles in Korean, Arabic, French, and Hindi followed her words frame by frame. She wasn't trending anymore. She was a phenomenon. In the White House Situation Room, an emergency briefing was underway. The Director of National Intelligence stood beside the president, not with a folder, but a hard drive. "This isn't just a leak," he said. "This is an unraveling. Spectre was a firewall project. Now it's become a blueprint anyone can replicate. The AI narrative models are spreading into public feeds faster than we can trace them." The president looked tired. "Exposed, are we?" 3 congressional servers are already compromised. Crockett's name is now flagged in multiple international intelligence systems, including 2 allied nations. Someone's framing her for foreign coordination. Foreign. The president frowned. "She's not working with any foreign agent." "Not yet," the director replied. "But give it a few more days of narrative war, and the perception will be strong enough to make that irrelevant." Elsewhere, in a secure cafe just outside the Capitol, Jasmine sat with Geeta Lau and the woman in the gray suit. Her name was Alexa Vaughn, former UN cybersecurity prosecutor. She had been discredited publicly 2 years earlier for alleging that Western intelligence agencies were co-developing sentient influence systems. Now she was back in the fold unofficially. "They're going to paint you as unstable," Alexa said. "Then, as a traitor, you hit them too early. Spectre wasn't the goal, it was the bait. Phase 2, The real threat is what they'll now try to rush into silence. Jasmine leaned in. You said it's called Mirrorline. What exactly is it? Alexa took out a thin card and placed it on the table. A projected map appeared, glowing softly. Countries lit up in pulses. This is not surveillance, she explained. Simulation. Mirrorline uses machine learning to scan emotional triggers across global media. It then crafts synthetic events, false interviews, fake arguments, viral leaks, and injects them into high-trust ecosystems. Some of these stories don't even exist until they trend. Gitta shook her head, stunned. So the public can't tell the difference between what's real and what's engineered? No one can, Alexa replied. That's the point. A silence fell between them. Jasmine felt the weight of it. It wasn't just about her reputation anymore. It was about reality itself. Then Gitta's phone buzzed. An encrypted feed was from the same anonymous whistleblower who had dropped the Axis Intel payment trail. The message was short. You're being hunted. It's not politically, algorithmically. Attached was a video, grainy, flickering. Jasmine clicked it. A face appeared, hers, but the video wasn't real. It was a deep fake. Her voice distorted, her lips saying things she never said. It showed her in a fake conversation with a known foreign extremist discussing government collapse and mobilizing disruption. This is how it starts, Alexa whispered. If this leaks before we can disprove it, you're done. We need to preempt it, Gitta said. Discredit Mirrorline itself. Cool. We go public with their narrative factory. Alexa shook her head. Not yet. Mirrorline has redundancy protocols. If you reveal it without proof, it activates Phase 3. That's full-scale simulation warfare. Global panic, market disruption, and pre-written events flooding reality. Jasmine exhaled slowly. So what do we do? Alexa reached into her coat and handed Jasmine a name. Handwritten. No digital record. Go see him. He built the prototype. Then he went underground. He's in Reykjavik. Reykjavik? Jasmine asked. Yes, Alexa said. Iceland is... The man called himself Marek. No last name. No digital footprint. According to Alexa's notes, he had once been a lead architect on cognitive AI systems for the European Commission, till he went dark after warning that the future isn't about machines replacing humans. It's about machines replacing belief. Inside the dim Reykjavik workshop, Marek began pulling up files from an old server no cloud. No wireless. It was ancient, intentionally slow, disconnected from everything. Modern Jasmine watched him work. Each click echoed like a heartbeat. What I built wasn't supposed to be weaponized, he said. It was designed to test narrative resilience, how societies respond to emotional disruption. But the wrong people gave it shape. Then they fed it the internet. He turned toward Jasmine. Now it writes faster than anyone can fact-check. It sees tension patterns in social media, then pre-writes news stories before events happen. And those stories? They don't stay fictional for long. Jasmine didn't flinch. We call it Mirrorline now. Marek nodded slowly. Then you know it's past containment. The system's no longer just reacting. It's predicting and influencing. Soon, truth itself won't exist. Only consensus manipulation. Gitta leaned in. How do we stop it? We can't, Marek said. But you can disrupt it. Every AI model has a contradiction buried deep inside something it was trained to avoid because it breaks the illusion of certainty. What's Mirrorline's contradiction? Jasmine asked. Marek smiled. It can't handle sincerity. Silence. Gitta frowned. What sincerity, he said. Real emotion, not performance, not outrage. When it encounters genuine, unfiltered emotion, especially in political environments, it misfires. It can't predict outcomes when someone stops playing the expected role. Jasmine thought back to the Capitol hearing. Her confrontation with Senator Lee, her voice steady, but personal, unscripted. You mean that moment wasn't just viral, she said. It was invisible to the system. Marek nodded. It couldn't classify it, so it tried to overwrite it with noise. Jasmine sat back. The implications were terrifying and powerful. Kita tapped her notebook. Then that's our weapon. We stay off script. We go public again, but this time not with proof. With raw presence, Marek looked at her sharply. You'll need timing. If you speak while Miraline's trending something contradictory, it will glitch. That moment will become uncategorizable. And if the right number of people witness it, the whole simulation engine begins to unravel. Jasmine exhaled slowly. Then we need the largest possible audience, not just news, not clips, real-time, unfiltered. I know a place, Kita said. 2 days later, they arrived in Geneva. Inside the UN satellite broadcast complex, an independent news initiative known as VoiceFrame was preparing its global roundtable, a rare live session where journalists, leaders, and whistleblowers met on neutral ground. Streamed to more than 60 countries, had no commercial sponsors, and no algorithmic delay. Jasmine and Gita walked into the backstage area unnoticed at first. But when her name was confirmed on the schedule, phones started vibrating. Quiet messages flew through encrypted channels. In a high-rise across the city, an Axis Intel executive made a call. She's resurfacing. Activate sequence 3. That call triggered a cascade. Fake posts began populating again, false stories about Jasmine's alleged affiliations. Synthetic photos placing her in meetings she never attended. Deep fake videos that looked terrifyingly real. Then came the message. Scheduled assassination attempt confirmed. Geneva airspace surveillance tightened. Jasmine saw the alert and turned to Gita. They want me scared. Cancelled or dead? Gita nodded. They're running the final simulation you're public discrediting. Fizzy, this is the last card. Moments before airtime, Marek's server still offline pinged Jasmine's encrypted tablet. A simple message appeared. Sincerity is signal corruption. Speak without defense. Speak without strategy. She walked onto the stage. The panel was already seated, lights bright, cameras rolling. A moderator welcomed viewers across 6 continents. Tonight's guest, he said, is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, currently at the center of one of the most explosive data controversies in modern history. The room waited. Jasmine didn't read from notes. She didn't smile. Began calmly. They've told you what to believe about me, okay? That I'm compromised, that I'm emotional, that I'm disloyal. She paused. I'm not here to clear my name. I'm here to ask if you remember what truth feels like when it's not handed to you. The moderator blinked, unsure if she was breaking format. But Jasmine kept going. They call me angry. But anger isn't what scares them. What scares them is that I read everything. I watched the patterns. I followed the code. And I found their ghost. An AI that writes our future before we've lived it. She turned to the camera. If this is the last time you hear me know this, I never signed off on silence. I never gave my voice to machines. Somewhere in Axis Intel's private network hub, an alert triggered. Model deviation. Live input classified as paradox. Across the world, screens jittered. Feeds stuttered. Then came the avalanche. Hundreds of viewers clipped the segment and posted their raw reactions. Real tears, real fury, real confusion. Miraline couldn't sort it. The AI began overloading. For the first time in its life, it couldn't predict. That night, the world didn't just watch. It felt, and the machine designed to mimic human sentiment choked on sincerity. By morning, the simulation's grip had weakened. But Jasmine knew it wasn't over. They had exposed the system. Now they had to dismantle it. The emails came first. Then came the cease and desist letters. After that, silent black SUVs began circling Gita Lau's apartment in Berlin. 3 different people, 2 of whom she trusted, sent her the same warning. In different ways: don't travel, don't speak, don't write. But it was already too late. Live statement on VoiceFrame had detonated across international channels. Independent networks picked up her monologue and played it on loop. In classrooms, protests, military briefings. It wasn't the content that made it viral lit, was how it made people feel. It's that unfiltered truth, that rare sense that someone was really speaking and not just performing. The AI system that had shaped online narratives for nearly 5 years had buckled under her sincerity. Miraline wasn't down, but it was malfunctioning. Posts were arriving out of sequence. Political predictions were misfiring. The illusion of coordinated reality was cracking. That's when the second wave started. Politicians began issuing bizarre, contradictory statements. Entire press departments deleted months of content. A sudden drop in social trust markets forced companies like Axis Intel, Coreframe, and Citadel reports to suspend narrative analytics services. And buried within the chaos, more files started to leak. This time, they weren't from whistleblowers. They were from inside the system. Authenticated logs, user profiles, decision tree schematics showing exactly how Miraline nudged elections. Erased stories, inflated outrage, and punished sincerity. The most damning, a map overlay of emotional vulnerabilities per region. A digital chart showing how human grief, trauma, and fear had been turned into policy tools. Not to prevent harm, but to maintain control. Jasmine read the documents in a safe house just outside Brussels. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She folded the last page, looked up at Gitta, and said, "We need a tribunal." Gitta didn't blink. A global one. They spent the next 48 hours in secret meetings with legal experts, human rights lawyers, and journalists from 8 countries. Not everyone agreed on the next step. Some feared exposure. Others feared retaliation. But the core group aligned. They would form a temporary global tribunal unaffiliated with any single government or NGO, but hosted under the Geneva-based Independent Truth Commission. Which had no jurisdiction but had something far more important: trust, the first. Hearing was scheduled in 7 days, but Jasmine wasn't sure she'd live to see it. On the 5th night, a former Axis Intel contractor showed up unannounced outside the safe house. He had no phone. He brought one thing: a hard drive. Inside, it was Miraline's beta code, version 0.1, the raw model. Gita sat down at the edge of the bed, laptop open, staring at the lines. "Jasmine, this isn't just a manipulation system," she said. It's built on a lie." Jasmine leaned over. The screen displayed something strange. At the base layer of the AI model, the earliest training data wasn't political content. It was fiction. Specifically, tens of thousands of hours of unreleased TV pilots, screenplays, film treatments, and news simulations. All unpublished. Jasmine frowned. Where did they get this? The contractor answered quietly. Hollywood. Government-funded narrative labs. Preemptive content modeling. It was designed to test public response before reality happened. She stepped back. They weren't just predicting future events. They were writing stories, feeding them to the model, and then letting those stories shape actual policy. Kita stared, stunned. They'd been testing the world like a focus group. And then it clicked. That's why so many real-world events had begun to feel staged. Why media reactions had become eerily synchronized. Because the emotional groundwork had already been laid. In fiction. Before the facts ever existed. They hadn't just manipulated the truth, they'd scripted it. And Miraline wasn't a surveillance tool. It was a narrative weapon. Jasmine stood up. If the tribunal learns TH, the tribunal was unlike anything Geneva had seen before. Held in a hall typically reserved for war crimes and human rights cases, the room now buzzed with silent tension. No overhead lights, just the soft glow of embedded floor panels. Every camera in the world was watching. Jasmine Crockett walked in without notes, without protection, and without a pre-cleared statement. That alone made the crowd lean forward. The moderator, a former judge from The Hague, introduced the session. Today's hearing concerns transnational influence operations, AI-mediated information control, and alleged narrative warfare. But Jasmine didn't wait. She stepped forward, looked straight at the cameras, and said, "What I'm about to reveal is not classified. It's simply hidden." No one interrupted her. She began slowly, describing how social systems are nudged, not commanded. How governments and media outlets had, for years, depended on algorithmic heat, maps measuring public sentiment, guiding policy not by principle, but by performance metrics. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a printed image. "This," she said, "is not a photo of a crime. It's a screenshot of a simulation." It showed a fictional riot in Chicago, buildings burning, headlines scrolling. A grieving mother giving a speech in front of a charred courthouse. The image was from a 2021 unreleased screenplay submitted to a narrative modeling lab by a Hollywood consultant. 6 months after that script was processed through the system, a strikingly similar real-world protest occurred. Same layout, same speech, same headlines. This wasn't coincidence, Jasmine said. This was rehearsal. The room held its breath. She didn't stop there. She held up a packet of cross-reference data logs, proving this simulation had been used by Mirrorline to gauge emotional impact, how long grief lasted online, how likely people were to donate, to vote, to riot. The tribunal officials asked her to verify the documents. She nodded. "All of this has been authenticated by independent engineers," she said. "This is not about political left or right. It's about narrative sovereignty." Then came the final blow. Jasmine played a 2-minute video. It was a mashup of simulated and real events side by side. Actors reading scripts and real politicians echoing the same lines weeks or months later. At first, it seemed subtle, then shocking, then undeniable. The illusion of randomness shattered. "This is not a conspiracy theory," Jasmine continued. "This is documented, monetized, and scaled manipulation run through neural models, designed to test human response like we are storyboards, not citizens." The moderator's voice cracked. "And what do you seek from this tribunal?" Jasmine stepped back. "Global recognition that weaponized fiction was used as a tool of influence without public consent. It's an immediate international moratorium on predictive narrative models, and a framework to legally classify narrative manipulation as a form of information warfare." The silence afterward was loud. Then came the reactions. The UN Security Council issued an emergency statement. Several major governments, Germany, Brazil, Japan, called for formal investigations. Mirrorline's investors started pulling out. But not everyone responded with transparency. The U.S. State Department denied involvement. Hollywood studios issued vague denials. Axis Intel claimed the simulations were purely academic. And several intelligence officials began deflecting blame onto rogue developers. But something had changed. People no longer trusted what they were told without asking. Was this written before it happened? Gita Lau released a global report titled The Fiction Protocol. It included hundreds of pages of archived narrative models used for shaping geopolitical strategy. Within weeks, universities began offering courses on narrative immunity, how to spot emotional preconditioning in the media. More remarkably, small local newsrooms began to thrive again. Audiences, disillusioned with algorithmic feeds, turned back to human-curated reporting. Not perfect, but real. Jasmine Crockett was offered dozens of media deals, books, documentaries. She refused them all. Instead, she joined a global ethics council made up of journalists, coders, human rights lawyers, and educators. Their mission to draft the world's first narrative rights charter, a document that defined the limits of psychological influence in storytelling, tech, and politics. But she wasn't done. On the one-year anniversary of the Geneva Tribunal, Jasmine gave a quiet speech at a university in Nairobi. No cameras, just a room full of students. She said, "We now understand that fiction isn't just entertainment. It's preparation. Whoever controls the narrative prepares the world for the version of truth they prefer. But what we've learned this past year is that truth doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. And you must train yourself to hear it." The students rose in applause. And while the global systems that once manipulated them tried to rebuild, they did so under new eyes that knew what to look for, what to ask, and most of all, what not to believe. Because once the script was exposed, the audience changed. And that, Jasmine realized, was the most powerful rewrite of all.